Hi there and welcome to our presentation today. We are going to be talking about PPP forgiveness and specifically the documentation of needs. I'm excited to introduce Dalby, Wendland and Company as our guest presenters today. They are a regional firm providing tax guidance and strategy, and especially during challenging times, and that's certainly one we're in now. And so with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Chris West, the CEO and principal of Dalby, Wendland and Company, and he also has one of his tax managers, Mark Plants, CPA, also on the line with us today. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Diana. We're just going to spend a few moments here together and talk about the PPP program, and particularly the documentation of need as part of the PPP program. It certainly has been not common nomenclature these last few months. I think every small business in America understands what PPP is and the process that's involved with obtaining that loan. What we're going to spend just a few minutes doing here is not talking about the process of obtaining that loan or the forgiveness aspect of it that happens later, but it's that documentation of need when applying for the loan and some of the media kind of hype and concerns that have been brought up because of what's called the certification of need that's in these loan applications. And so what is need? And we have need there in quotes. Need was a term put in the application and signed off by the borrower that the current economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary to support your ongoing operations, and you certify that you have no access to additional sources of capital. And that's the certification on the SBA application that every borrower has to certify to. The SBA came out with frequently asked questions, and they've come out with quite a few of them. And they came out with FAQ 31 that kind of caused a lot of pause with some borrowers. And we're going to get to here in a second FAQ 46, which gave us a lot more comfort, and that came out just last week. But at the FAQ 31 came out and said, quote, all borrowers must assess their economic need for a PPP loan under the standard established by the CARES Act and the PPP regulations at the time of the loan application, end quote. Need under the PPP is subjective and vague. It's very difficult to determine which business is truly in need, which is not, and that was certainly left to a lot of subjectivity when applying for the loan. Certainly, any business just coming at it from a big picture perspective, and I'm a CEO of a small business as well here in Western Colorado, and just like any other business, our thought was certainly we have need. And there certainly is uncertainty as we are progressing forward in this global pandemic. And back in March, when all of this was happening, and in the beginning of April, when the PPP program was rolled out, it was certainly easy to make the claim that there's a lot of uncertainty in our business. There's always uncertainty in any business, but certainly more so above and beyond the normal risks that a business owner takes. There's a lot of uncertainty out there in this type of climate. So most borrowers found it easy to sign off on this certification and say, yeah, this loan is needed for ongoing operations, and I have no access, into other sources of capital. If we go to the next slide, what began to happen certainly prior to the issuance of FAQ 31, and what I think is all obvious to everyone kind of that's been watching this, that certain bad players came about. And I shouldn't say bad players. I'll retract that statement. But the LA Lakers, Harvard University, Shake Shack, they certainly, they obtain loans when maybe there's certainly access to capital that might be there. And it certainly created this air of, are these businesses that need the loan? So FAQ 31 came about. It added this other sources of capital and caused everybody to pause a little bit. Lender does not need to confirm need. The SBA notes that lenders may rely on a borrower's certification regarding the necessity of the loan request. So the certification is not, verified by the bank. The bank you worked with is not responsible for vetting or going through their normal due diligence process. This is something that was kind of there, and borrowers needed to certify that they truly have need for this loan. And then thankfully came along FAQ 46. I don't have it here in the slide, but it's FAQ 46, I believe, if I'm going from memory there. Came out last week, and it said there's now a safe harbor that those with PPP loans of less than $2 million will be deemed to have had necessity for the loan under a safe harbor. So the SBA essentially is saying in FAQ 46 that they understand that loans below this $2 million threshold are generally less likely to have had access to adequate sources. So businesses applying for loans under $2 million are deemed to have had are less likely to have had access to adequate sources of liquidity in the current economic environment. So this enables the SBA to use its resources for reviewing loans in excess of $2 million, and they can focus on those big loans versus the under $2 million loans. So this, I'll call it safe harbor, although it's coming out in an SBA FAQ. It's guidance that seems to give comfort, and I would agree does give comfort to those businesses who obtained a loan under $2 million, that there's much less risk that they're going to be looked at. And I said, why do I say much less? And it goes to this last bullet point. Beware, however, at the time of the lender's submission of the borrower's loan forgiveness, it is still possible the SBA will review the loan files. I just say this without giving 100% assurance to anybody. We've been going through constant change here for the last 3 months. Nothing surprises me anymore. So even if you have a loan under $2 million, I think it's good to go through what we'll talk about next here in documenting your assessment of need and the status of your business as we entered this pandemic. So better to be prepared and build your arsenal. And this is whether you have a PPP loan over $2 million or under $2 million. Certainly, if your PPP loan is over $2 million, you should be very diligent with documenting your definition of need, or how your circumstances meet the need certification under the SBA application. So before we kind of go down through these slides, just generally speaking, the format of documentation is much less important than the content. A memo that you put together in a Word document, or even if it's handwritten, but certainly something digital, I think is preferable, that you put down on paper, in a format that you can modify, and attaching some financial data and schedules to it, I think would be important as you build your file for documenting the need for the PPP loan. So supporting documents showing need may include your financial statements, accounts receivable reports, bank account statements, include notations of such items as requests, notice of delayed payments from customers, and increased write-downs of charges. So if you have documented communication coming from your customers about their need to delay payments to you, or to cut back on services, or to reduce orders from you, documenting that and putting it into this file is important. That shows that there's a great uncertainty surrounding whether or not you were going to be able to collect and keep steady with your revenue within your business. Shortfalls in current or budgeted production levels due to your business, your type of business employees are less productive and less demand from customers. So documenting those circumstances would be very important. Working capital limitations. If you're a contractor and you have bonding requirements, and if you would have to tap your working capital, whether that be cash or other resources that you might have, that at the time of applying for the loan, answering the question, well, if I do that, my bonding requirements with my bonding company could could be violated. And that's a reason to document. I need to have this loan in order to keep my bonding requirements whole. Working capital limitations causing significant business risks if use existing or take on new debt. So if you had a line of credit available, but you didn't have a balance on it, but asking the question of, well, if I tap that line of credit versus take a PPP loan, how detrimental to my business will that be? What kind of significant business risk and uncertainty will that cause in my business? I think it's pretty good to say that most businesses can make the case that taking on new debt increases the risk and causes a great amount of uncertainty going into the future. A plan for reducing staff and payroll that is put on hold in expectation of receiving PPP loan forgiveness. And so if you fundamentally were thinking through, I'm going to have to cut back 50% of my staff, either in numbers or in dollars, document that plan, and then document that because of getting a PPP loan, I didn't have to do that, or didn't have to do that as deeply as was originally planned. So documenting that in your file, I think goes to the heart of what the PPP loan was all about, which is to help subsidize and continue to pay employees on your payroll. So the next slide is documenting workforce risks. Employees depart if their comp level drops. And so you're putting that in a file, talking about your employees. And if you were to start cutting salaries across the board, they're gonna go find greener pastures, go find competitors. Employees prefer to claim unemployment due to significant increase in these benefits. We've seen that quite a bit. We've heard a lot of media coverage about that as well. Employees saying, yeah, I can make more money on unemployment. Well, documenting that, you keeping your employees there and on payroll and fully paid is important documentation for getting that PPP loan. Complications for parents needing to stay home due to school and daycare closures, getting that down on paper. Documenting the steps you are taking to reduce risk or preserve capital. Hiring freezes. You get together with your leadership team and you document, maybe in board minutes, that you're having a hiring freeze. Is good documentation that you're making moves to protect your business, the uncertainty that exists, and the need for a PPP loan to pay for current payroll. Reducing previously budgeted expenditures. If you had a capital budget and you documented a need to cancel doing those improvements, or cancel leasehold improvements or purchasing equipment, computers, document that, put it in the file for your PPP loan. It shows then you are assessing risk and uncertainty and canceling certain expenditures. It goes to more support that you needed that PPP loan. And drawing down existing lines of credits. And I talked about that previously. If you have an existing line of credit, and you can do an analysis to say, in fact, we even did this in our company, if our cash flow was 50% less than what it was prior year, when would we draw on a line of credit? We ran those numbers and it showed, yeah, we draw on a line of credit pretty early and we tap it out completely by some point midsummer. And when you document that, put it in your file, it shows that the PPP loan was going to play a dramatic role in helping keep people on payroll and paying their salaries at pre-COVID levels. So all things to put in your file: written effects of state and local orders, documenting the stay-at-home and safer-at-home orders and anything that your county was doing. If you had to close, documenting the dates when you had to close your doors or alter your hours. Hindrance of income due to the type of business, gyms and bars and seasonal obviously have been impacted greatly. Documenting the timeline of when you closed, when you had to go to a 50% reduction, or when you had to go to a full reduction, or when you simply had to shutter your doors. So putting all that down is important. Other uncertainties such as supply chain, if customers will even return to your business when you can reopen or afford your products or services. Businesses, such as ours, supply chain is not a big deal, but many other businesses, restaurants, manufacturing, whatever, contractors, whatever it might be, that supply chain could have been disrupted, probably is still disrupted. And if that affects you, documenting it in your PPP loan file is important to show the assessment of need and uncertainty that involve your business for the foreseeable future. And talk with your accounting advisor to help crunch the numbers and assess your risks. They can also help with forecast reports to show cash flow issues. Again, just to kind of summarize this, under $2 million in loans, yeah, you're probably can breathe a little easier. That said, I think it's still important to walk through this process and have a file, because you never know. Again, the SBA can look at your loan if during the debt forgiveness phase, and they may change. I'm not surprised anymore with the changes that happen. But with FAQ 46, under 2 million, I think we can breathe easier. Over 2 million, definitely you should be going through this process, if not more. These are just a few bullet points, and there could be a laundry list of many other bullet points of things you can do to document the assessment of need and then the necessity to apply for that PPP loan. And certainly, maybe it goes without saying, put in some language just about the global uncertainty. I think documenting that everything we've heard about vaccinations, you've got a lot of our government officials have said, and even some of the governors in the country have talked about staying in some form of lockdown until a vaccination is out there. Well, that could be a long time, and we have various government officials and NIH and CDC talking about different time frames for vaccinations and a vaccination becoming available. Putting that in your documentation file that we don't have any idea when our business is going to get back to normal speed. And if it's a vaccination that's needed, then that could be months, maybe well into next year before that even happens. We're not medical experts, but those are the things that our government officials are telling us. So tying it back into your PPP loan documentation, I think, is an important step to do, that you are assessing the risk and the uncertainty that exists, that your business will get back up to full speed. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that was helpful. And maybe there's a nugget or two you can take from that as you document your PPP loan. Thank you.